Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, the co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Did you get a lot of good rest last night?
I did not. I was up until 3 in the morning, I think.
Oh, you were pins and needles watching what the future will bring.
I took a little snooze, though, but then I woke up right before Trump gave his talk.
Oh, okay. Well, a lot of people stayed up, and, there's a lot of hopes. There's always hopes for the next administration to fix up all our problems, and there'll be a lot of analysis going on, and people will be. I think basically people would like to see things better, and they don't hope that people will fail. But there's still a lot of problems out there, and there's a lot of people talking about who won. I've always said during this campaign that it looks, regardless, that the people are going to lose, and I hope I'm wrong on that the people won't lose. But I tell you one place where I think the people won, and that is that the pundits, the professionals, the pollsters, the special interests, even many in the marketplace, how schizophrenic the market's been working. You have the head of the FBI come out and say something and the markets go up. He says something the next day and the markets go down. It's so fickle, and this sort of thing. And all these predictions that they know. But really the pollsters and the media, and I think they were biased, against Trump. I think they were sort of biased.
About 100%.
Yeah. So I think anybody who is opposed to the status quo has to be pleased that those who think they run the world have been challenged by the grassroots. And I think that's very good that is the case, and hopefully that can be translated, because we've talked about that a lot. You've got to convert the grassroots, and if the grassroots can be converted, they have to get pretty angry to speak out in an election like this and sort of overcome all this. But that's sort of what happened with Brexit too. The pundits were all saying this is what you had to do. So I think it's a lesson that we can learn, that our approach to appealing to the people to change their minds and then reflect and make sure that they put pressure on our leaders and the people in government to come to their senses.
I have to say, I watched ABC for most of last night, and talking about the pundits, I thoroughly enjoyed watching Bill Kristol, who somehow was still considered an expert after being wrong in every single thing he does. It looked like he'd sat on a bowl of prickly pear cactus all night. He had this look, just pure agony. So regardless of who won, it was nice to see him in the hot seat, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be a lot of discussion on policy, and I think the first hint we'll get on what's happening, what we can expect, will be the appointments. And already, of course, they agitated about appointments even before, who's going to be in the cabinet. But it'll be serious talk now. Who's going to be in the Supreme Court, who's going to be in the cabinet, and who's going to be the advisors. And that's a mixed bag, and I don't want to get into that too deeply because we really don't know. But we do have some hints. It looks like one hope that we had, and people are still hopeful, that the administration will be less controlled by the neoconservatives. But unfortunately, it looks like the neoconservatives are nuzzling up to Trump, both before and after, which means that I think people have to be alert if they don't like what the neoconservatives have been doing ever since we've had George Bush, because that's bipartisan, and it's part of the deep state. So we have to be cautious and try to figure out exactly how much influence they're going to have. And I guess we have a few hints on what might occur there.
Yeah, I monitor Twitter a lot because it gives a good indication, and I watch the neocons a lot. And all of a sudden, when the Trump victory was coming, so many conciliatory tweets, people like Max Boot, who was viciously anti-Trump the whole time. Now, and I hope he does a good job, So they're all angling, they're all about power, and they're all going to flip on a dime. The question is, how much headway will they make? But, you talk about the possibility of people getting cabinet posts. And we've talked about this before. The problem is institutional. The experts, the foreign policy experts, this is my biggest frustration, people who considered experts, they're only the neocons, the people that he has to draw from that pool are the neocons. And so you think foreign policy, oh, well, John Bolton has a lot of foreign policy expertise. Yeah, but it's all bad. Oh, Newt Gingrich, yeah, his instincts are horrible. So this is the biggest fear, I think, that people are going to be disappointed that these same old Bush retreads who lied us into the Iraq war are going to go right back in.
Yeah, we need to remain vigilant on that issue for sure. But domestically, I'm not even really up on exactly who he will rely on for economic advice. He has said some decent things about being cautious about our Federal Reserve System. Let's hope that pans out. But that won't change much very fast because, you're not going to get rid of the Fed immediately, and we have to look and see what the Fed is going to do, and because they're an entity unto themselves, and they're closer to the deep state than they are to the president, although they play these games. Usually the president is very much involved with the deep state, but we don't know exactly how much influence that'll be on economic things. There's some suggestions here we need to be cautious about foreign policy, but on economic things, and unfortunately the momentum of 100 years of Keynesian economics, inflationism, and Federal Reserve is so powerful that it's hard to reverse this, but it does make a difference. So I'm hoping he gets the advisors and the support and has the legislative wisdom to give some tax breaks, even though I see that as good, but way removed from solving our problems of dealing with the business cycle, the malinvestment, the debt that has to be liquidated. So I'll be anxiously watching, exactly who is going to have his ear on what kind of policies he's going to push first.
This goes back to what you've said all along. The real danger is operating without a guiding philosophy. And it's the same in economic policy and in foreign policy. When you don't have a guiding philosophy to at least give you some hints as to what you should do, you'll just reach out for experts. Maybe it's Bolton, maybe it's someone on the economic side that's maybe Krugman or someone, you don't have a philosophy that guides you, and that's the real problem.
A point to support what you're saying is that Trump has been pretty good on taxes, lower taxes. But then, and there was an initiative on this, and we want to talk a little bit more about initiatives, that one initiative was to raise the minimum tax, minimum wage. Yeah. And they were winning on this. Of course, Trump is for raising the minimum wage. Of course, I'm for raising minimum wages. I want the maximum wage. Yeah. The best way to get a maximum wage is to have a free market economy and reward productivity. And that's how capitalism works. You become more productive and salaries have to go up. They become competitive. But minimum wage is not the way to go. So his guiding path, if he had an influence by Austrian economics, he would say, oh, no, it doesn't make any sense, to have minimum wage laws.
And he must instinctively know that he's a successful businessman. He surely has hired and promoted people and understood that if they do better, they get, more wages. So
he wouldn't be political, though. I want to go over a little bit about the initiatives. And there were several. And one was dealing with the minimum wage. There's some that have dealt with on marijuana, and some on gun control. Mm-hmm. I don't like to say gun rights because you have a right to own a gun, and you have a right to own property. But a gun issue in California, and there was something on death penalty and taxing soda pops and this kind of things. So which one did you think was the best, and which one might he have been the worst outcome on these initiatives, as far as looking at it from a liberty viewpoint?
Yeah, these are the ones that's kind of easy to ignore because everyone is looking at Trump Clinton. It's the Super Bowl, the main event. But these other things I think are important. You're right, and I think we talked about it before the show. I think the marijuana initiatives are a great success for the liberty movement. California, Massachusetts, Nevada approved medical marijuana initiatives, the biggest victory since 2012. Recreational marijuana, Maine, Arizona, Colorado, and Washington. No, that's wrong. But so there's been a huge increase in medical marijuana and recreational marijuana approved in the initiatives.
Yeah, and I think this is good, and these are positive. I always like to make sure people understand that it's a narrow approach. It doesn't touch the principle of liberty, because the principle of liberty is that individuals have the responsibility what they put into their bodies, whether it's drugs or whether it's immunizations or what kind of food you eat, whether you're eating and taking vitamins. This should all be individual decisions made. And but the marijuana is important because it's a nudge in the right direction. But since I'm totally disinterested in the use of so many drugs, the principle is, do you have the responsibility and right to make those decisions, which means that anything you put in your body should be legal.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, they said, was there ever a time like that? Yeah, in our history, like 150 years. And they weren't all cocaine addicts then.
Yeah.
They still drank a lot of alcohol, and they found out prohibition didn't work. So it's the principle of liberty there. But that I think was a definite positive because, generally speaking, they were moving in the direction of more liberty.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I couldn't read my writing earlier.
Yeah, you got their states right.
But in California, Massachusetts, Nevada, and probably Maine, recreational marijuana succeeded. Failed in Arizona.
Yeah.
So that's on the whole. We could talk about the critical mass that's reached that really is a de facto nullification of federal laws, and I think this moves us in the right direction.
Now, I'm always looking for consistency. I never liked, as you know, to vote for a bill that was basically pretty good, but it had a few things, 5, 10, 15% of it, pretty bad.
Yeah.
And I thought incrementalism in a negative way is very, very bad because you concede too much. But in California, they sort of lead the charge for legalizing marijuana, so they get a little plus for that. But they also are leading the charge against buying bullets for their guns. So they're tougher now. I guess that passed rather easily.
Yeah, treating bullets as guns, you have to have a background check. So for purchasing bullets, I wonder if that's related to the marijuana.
Probably. Yeah. So then there was the other two. On minimum wage, we mentioned that there were 4 states. I think it was Colorado, Washington, and
Maine and Arizona.
On minimum wages, and they all passed. It's sort of like, it makes me feel better because I'm helping the poor people and they deserve it. They do. But it isn't the solution. Eliminating personal choices and eliminating a market factor because you want the market rate of wages. And it's just like you need the market rate of interest. If you interrupt, the price of interest and you interrupt the price of wages, it messes up the economy. And already some of those cities that have recently gone up to $15 an hour, there's pretty good evidence that people were laid off, unemployment rates went up where they do that. And of course, the other side argues the opposite. But the principle is why do you want to regulate economic interaction? We don't regulate social interaction. There's a lot of risk in that. Some people, I guess, would like to even do that. But generally speaking, people think that if it's doing good, you're allowed to do it. Sort of on foreign policy, humanitarian if we're doing something for humanitarian reasons, then we have this moral obligation to abuse the citizens in this country, tax them, or make them fight wars that are not necessary, because there's a humanitarian instinct to help some people. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. It usually amplifies the problems they're trying to solve. And that's the way minimum wages are. When you do this, matter of fact, one of the biggest problems in the Depression was the concerted effort. That's when minimum wages started. But there was a concerted public pressure by both Hoover and Roosevelt, not to lower wages. And they did not want lower prices for their food. They didn't want the correction to come. So they said, well, we've got to get the prices of food up. So the farmers were told they had to plow up food, their crops when people were hungry. The same way with wages, they put a lot of pressure on the businessman to keep wages up. And they were never able to make the corrections.
Yeah. Well, the other couple of things that, just to mention, Oklahoma and Nevada approved the death penalty, which is kind of either way for liberty, really. San Francisco decided to tax you if you want a soda pop for your own good, the nanny state. And Colorado approved a physician-assisted suicide initiative. So.
Yeah. Well, this gives us a hint as to what the people are thinking. Of course, there's a lot of money that goes into these initiatives, both pro and con. The people have a special axe to grind. The drug companies will campaign and spend a lot of money to keep marijuana from going on the market because they want you to buy these expensive drugs, which are probably a lot more dangerous than marijuana. And so there's a lot of special interest there to do that. But still, the people do express themselves, and I think sometimes you can get a pretty good hint about what's happening.
Here's some fallout. I think that's probably important to talk about. We were going to talk a little bit about the media. I think fallout on the media. I think the media was shown last night, the mainstream media, and I watch it. I don't usually watch the mainstream. I watched it last night, and it was shown to be absolutely, in the can for Hillary and with the establishment. And it was, completely broke down. Every single person seemed to have gotten the memo that when Trump started doing well, they started blaming uneducated whites, and it had such a racial tone to it that if it were on the other side, people would be up in arms, and rightly so.
Yeah, and I think that's good entertainment, and I think helps wake up people on what's really going on. But I was watching the financial markets carefully.
It's probably more important.
The crashing of the stock market and the skyrocketing gold prices, and then a sudden correction in both. Who knows where they are at this very moment? Because by the end of the day, it could be quite different. But I think that's an indication. Markets are very, very important. They give you pretty good hints. Even sometimes they're very short-lived, which means the shorter the time span between the market sending out a strong signal means the more chaotic things are and the more they're trying to sort things out. But markets have a lot of money at stake and they do a lot of sorting out. But I think this is sort of another prediction of mine, is that's not going to go away today. The chaos, the fluctuations up and down. I don't think they're going to sort it out. I don't think they're going to sort Trump out. I don't think they have to sort out what he said and what he believes in and who his advisors are, how much consistency there will be, and what he can get done, and who in Congress is going to help him. There's so much yet to be sorted out. And it's more than just, a personality and a management problem. It's the reason I become less hopeful in seeing some miraculous thing happening is not the shortcomings of the politicians and not only the shortcomings of maybe philosophy, but it's the understanding or their misunderstanding of how serious and how big the problems are. The attack on liberty, the foreign intervention's been around a long time, and the fallacy in the Federal Reserve System, the motto of Keynesian economics is spending is good and inflating and borrowing. That's a whole philosophy that we've lived with probably close to 100 years, and it's failing. And this in the last 9 years they failed. People know it. The people. I think the average person, the working man, voted for Trump. They're getting behind.
Yeah.
But I don't think they see. Unfortunately, the message isn't out there yet on where the real problem is, because these are predictable events. When governments get involved like this, you have this, but because nothing happens, you don't get real growth back again until you get rid of some of the mistakes. As many as you can. You have to liquidate the mistakes, liquidate the debt, liquidate the malinvestment, but instead it's just piling on more and more, pasting it together, glue it together, hope we can hold the air in, don't let the bubble burst. And then you make that argument and say, oh yeah, you want the people to suffer. No, I don't want them to suffer, because it's exactly what we're doing. They're suffering. And because we did it in the Great Depression, now we're in another great recession, and it just prolonged the agony. They've done it in Japan, and this is the political difficulty that no matter from which angle you come from is the most difficult, because it's sort of like take your medicine.
Yeah.
You have a cancer there, and you're going to have a surgical procedure.
Yeah.
Well, that'll hurt. Yeah, it could hurt, but it'll hurt mostly the people who've been ripping us off.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a believer that the only way we can correct this mess is for people to suffer and sacrifice. I don't believe that for a minute. I think getting our liberties back is not a sacrifice.
I can't let you go without asking you a question. I know you don't like the gamesmanship of politics, but I wanted to ask you about Paul Ryan. He's gotten himself, I think, in a bit of a bind. He was early semi-supporter of Trump, then he almost unsupported him, and then when he sort of, and there was a lot of talk last night that he will be removed as Speaker. What do you think happens to Ryan now?
Well, my immediate reaction is the day after an election of a campaign that was very hostile, the winner is softened a great deal.
Yeah,
you know,
we
all
heard
of a
that.
sudden,
Yeah.
the tone is different, and that's good. And I think Ryan is going to survive, but I'm not betting very much money on it because Trump was pretty strong about that, and Trump supporters are pretty strong on it. So
Loyalty,
I could very much be wrong on this, but my impression, just the way things work, that they'll probably let him survive, and he's going to finally say something better about Trump, and we'll work things out. And who knows? Remains to be seen.
I was just going to remind you that you don't have to be a member of the House to be the Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
You may.
Why, you want to be Speaker?
No,
So, well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. And tomorrow we expect to talk some more about this very issue. But we want to address this from the angle of the libertarian philosophy. What did this election do? Are we in bad shape? Did we get some boost from the libertarian philosophy? What can we expect in libertarianism and freedom and constitutional government? Is it all a setback? Is it all going to be negative? Or can we work and get ourselves out of this mess, both economically and also involving our foreign policy? So there's lots of pros and cons on that, and some people are more optimistic than others. But tomorrow we'll address the fact, what will the future of libertarianism be as a result of this election? Thank you very much for tuning in today, and please come back soon.